Welcome everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be going over some tips and tricks to make your time in the outdoors easier and more enjoyable. So let's get right into it. One thing I get asked about all the time is how do I deal with the insects out here in this northern wilderness. We have a wide variety of biting insects, including mosquitoes, flies, midges, chiggers, that will all leave you hurting if you don't come prepared. I've tried so many different types of insect repellents over the years, both off-the-shelf type and homemade remedies like oils, soaps, lotions, and I always end up coming back to two specific products. The first being a repellent spray. This is my first line of defense. You want to make sure you get spray that contains DEET. I know a lot of people have an issue with that, but again, I've tried so many different products and I always come back to DEET spray. You want to make sure you get one that has at least 25% DEET in it. The best ones I've used have had 30%, but this 25% does a pretty good job as well. Nothing beats this. You spray this on, the insects leave you alone. One thing I will add is I like to wear long sleeve shirts, pants, that way I have a physical barrier over my body. When I spray this on, the clothing holds the spray, which is much more effective than spraying it directly on your skin. So I highly recommend the DEET spray. I've found nothing else that works as well in deterring the biting insects. In addition to the repellent spray, once I get to my camp or where I'm setting up, one thing I always bring is a thermocell. This is a little butane burner that has chemical pads that you put into it and it releases a chemical into the air and it keeps the insects away so efficiently. It does such a good job. It gets to the point where you'll turn this off thinking there's no bugs around, and as soon as you turn it off, it's like flicking a switch. They're right back onto you. So that's how I deter insects in the outdoors. This combination right here keeps me pain-free, bite-free, and makes my time in the outdoors far more enjoyable. Next up, food storage. What do you do with your perishable items that you want to keep cool throughout the duration of your trip? First thing you can do is before you leave home, the meals that you're going to be eating later on in your trip, freeze the perishable items before you leave home. And that way, as they thaw, they'll stay cool and they'll also aid in keeping other food items cool. Once you actually get to camp though, what do you do with your food? The best thing that I've found to do is to dig a hole. Typically, you only have to go down about 12 inches or so and you'll get into some really cold ground. That's what I do. Dig a hole out, put my food in that hole, cover the hole, and my food always stays nice and cold throughout the duration of my trips. If the ground where you're at is really dry, you can add some moisture to the inside of the hole, which will have a slight evaporative cooling effect, helping to keep your food cool. And if you're worried about insects or rodents getting to your food, you can store it inside of a dry bag inside of that hole to help prevent anything from getting to your food. But a simple hole in the ground is what I use to keep my perishable items cool when I'm out camping. It's always useful to have some simple knots at your disposal. For this one, it's a basic cinch knot. In one end of my line, I formed a loop using a bowline knot. You can use any type of knot you want, but loop in one end of your rope, go around the item of gear that you're looking to cinch, and you go through that loop from the bottom side. A lot of people will stop here. When you pull this, it loses tension as soon as you let go. So what you can do is go through this loop once through the bottom side, come around and go through that loop once more the same way. Now when you pull it tight, it actually friction locks on itself. You can secure that off with a simple slipped overhand knot. That way it's not going anywhere until you release it. Quick and easy to do, very simple. This knot isn't limited to just securing your bedroll though. I find it has a lot of functionality around a camp. For example, by using this knot to secure a few sticks around a tree, you can space them out and you have an effective gear hanger right at your camp that takes little to no time to set up, keeping your gear high and dry off the ground. Everyone's got their preferred method for starting a fire. A lot of people opt for lighters. Me personally, I like matches inside of a waterproof match safe. I don't have to worry about fluid or fuel. I can look inside of my match safe and know exactly how many lights I have. Doesn't matter if it's plus 40 or 40 below. I know that I've got guaranteed fire inside of here. The problem most people have with matches is striking them in windy conditions, kind of like today. What a lot of people will do is they'll turn their back to the wind, so the wind's blowing this way. They'll try and strike it out in front of them, shelter it in their body. I find that isn't very effective. A lot of times as the wind comes around your body, it rushes in front of you and it puts your match out. What I actually find to be much more effective is to face the wind so it's blowing right at your face. Cup one hand, and after you strike your match, hold it upside down, of course, so that the flame carries up onto the matchstick, but cradle it inside of that cupped hand, and that protects it a great deal from the wind. One of the most appreciated items to have around a camp is a foam sitting pad. Obviously it's great for sitting on or putting on the ground, to kneel on it to keep your legs up off the ground. But what I use it for the most part at least, is to fan my fire. It works excellent to fan a bed of coals, to get your fire livened back up. And doing this certainly beats the alternative. Smoke in my eyes. So a foam sit pad, not just great for sitting on, it's also an excellent campfire tool. When it comes to cooking in the outdoors, nothing can ruin a meal quite like having all your food stick to the cookware that you're using. Luckily though, there's a very simple solution. We can pre-season our cookware. This is a very simple process. Basically, when you get your fire going, when you're building it up before it dies down to cook over, you can put your cookware over top of the fire, throw a little oil in it, enough to cover the inside of the pan, and bring it up to its smoking point, which means heating that oil up until it begins to smoke. Let it smoke for about 1 minute, and then take it off the heat. What that does is it creates a layer of polymerized or hardened oil on the inside surface of the cookware, which is basically a non-stick cooking surface. I typically like to discard that oil that I brought up to smoking temperature, and then when I get ready to cook, I just put a little fresh oil in and go about my cooking. And that's how I achieve a non-stick cooking surface on all my cookware that I use. It's a very simple process, very quick and easy to do, and it ensures that your meals aren't going to get ruined by having all your food stick to your cookware. One thing I'll add about cooking oil, I actually switched to lard. I used to pack cooking oil and it was a disaster. It made such a mess, it was so hard to keep clean. If it leaked, it would get all over everything. So I moved away from cooking oil. Now I carry lard. It's a solid, so it's not going to leak, it's easy to pack, and it also just tastes great. So you got yourself a nice cooking fire going. You throw your skillet on there and you're cooking, things are going good, but after a few minutes you notice that your heat is really starting to die down. This is a common problem I see people have when cooking over a fire. The trick is, when you have a coal bed like this, fire needs two things. It needs fuel, which is the wood that we're burning, and it needs oxygen. When you put your skillet on top like this, you're actually suffocating your fire. You need to have a bit of airspace between the bottom of your skillet and your coal bed. You can simply do this by just creating a little barrier. You can use 2 logs like this, you can use rocks, whatever you got, but just a little bit of airspace between the bottom of your skillet and your coal bed is going to make all the difference in maintaining your heat and giving you a better cook. Another really simple tip for cooking in the outdoors, but one that makes a big difference, is to pre-mix as much of your food as you can at home. Rather than bringing out a whole bunch of different ingredients and mixing everything out here, mix as much as you can at home. If you've got a bunch of dry ingredients that you're going to be mixing together anyways, just mix them all together at home. Makes for easier packing and way easier cooking in the outdoors. This is a little trick that I learned from my grandpa actually. I was fortunate enough to inherit some of his old cookware, and I had noticed on the inside of it he had actually made measuring marks. Sometimes in the outdoors you do have to measure stuff out for dehydrated meals, for instance, or for me I measure out my water for coffee. And so I followed in his footsteps. You can just barely see them here, but there's some scratch marks in here. Each one indicates a cup of water, so I got 1 cup, 2 cup, and 3 cup. I just scratched those in using a file. I just added a cup of water, marked where the top of it was, added another cup, and so forth. So now I can measure out exact amounts of water, and if I only need a little bit for a trailside cup of coffee, I know exactly how much water I need for 1 cup. Another great item to have around camp, especially when you're dealing with hot fire, hot pots and pans, is a good pair of leather gloves. Not only are they useful for many of the chores that you'll find yourself doing in the outdoors, dealing with trees with rough bark, thistles, thorns, but especially if we're working around the campfire. Having a good pair of leather gloves to help protect your hands from burns. These are a great item to have around camp. Now when you're all done your camp cooking, one of the main problems is your cookware usually ends up developing this black sooty coating on it. Lots of people will try to clean it off. Personally, I don't bother. It's actually beneficial to have this on because when your pot is good and dark like this, it's actually going to heat up, retain heat faster, and be more efficient cooking. So I like to leave this on. The only problem is when you put this in your pack, it can get the rest of your gear very dirty. So something that I do, it's very simple to do, is just grab an old scrap of cloth. Simply wrap your cookware up in it. And that creates a nice barrier. And I just use a little piece of rope, again using that same cinch knot. Cinch that down. Now my pot is completely covered. It's not going to get my pack dirty. It's nice and contained. And I don't have to worry about cleaning that black soot off. Whether you're pitching a tarp, a tent, setting up an awning, or adding some extra tie outs to reinforce in windy weather, one thing you're going to need is some stakes. These can be made very simply. I've just got a slim, straight pole here that's about as thick as my thumb. And all I have to do is alternate between straight cuts and angled cuts. So we'll start with an angled cut. That right there gives me an angled end that can pound into the ground. And I come about 8 inches up and I can make a straight across cut. That is my first stake complete. I've got an angled end that goes into the ground and a straight across end that I can pound in. And on this side we already have our straight cut, so now we can alternate to an angled cut. Now we have another tent stake, and they are that easy to make. And if you don't have an axe or you're not carrying one, you can make them with a knife too. You can just use a larger piece of wood to baton your knife through. There we go. You definitely want to maintain a good sharp edge on all your tools. It can be dangerous to try and fight through cuts with a dull blade. You don't really ever have to sharpen your knife unless you actually damage the edge and you can see that there's chips and burrs on it. But for the most part, you can maintain your edge with a strop. This is a piece of leather that you simply use to polish your edge to maintain its fine cutting edge. This strop has 2 sides, one of which is a little bit of a rougher leather that has some honing compound. You can get different types of compound. And then the other side is just a plain, smooth piece of leather for the final buffing process. You just drag your edge along it, and that polishes the edge. And that's how you get that nice mirror finish. Simple leather strop, very easy to carry, very easy to use, but it goes a long way in maintaining your edge. Whenever I use my knife, I make sure to strop it prior to using it, and if I'm using it for extended periods of time, I'll typically strop once every hour, sometimes even once every half hour, depending on how sharp of an edge I need. But very, very simple to do, and it's a very, very easy way to get a razor sharp edge. It seems no matter how careful you are dealing with sharp edge tools and all the rough tasks out here in the wilderness, your hands inevitably are going to get some small cuts, scrapes, and sores on them. It's best to take care of those before they become a bigger problem. Now I do recommend everyone carry a first aid kit that includes bandages and gauze just in case, but a simple natural bandage can be made out here very easily using spruce or pine sap. You simply find some fresh sap from a tree, you can apply it to those open sores and cover them up. And the sap actually has antiseptic properties which help with healing. And to avoid having sticky spots of sap all over your hand, I like to put charcoal dust on top of those. Charcoal itself has some antibacterial properties, and the charcoal dust will keep that sap on your hand from sticking to everything. So if you're ever in the outdoors and you need a quick patch up, a bandage is not too far away. Whether you're intentionally dealing with sap or just going on a leisurely stroll through the woods, it seems like you always end up making a mess with the stuff, and it's pretty hard to deal with. One way you can very easily deal with sap is with some hand sanitizer. Make sure to use hand sanitizer that has an alcohol content to it. It's the alcohol that actually works to remove it. You apply a little bit to any areas that are covered in sap, on your skin, on your gear, clothing, and that alcohol just breaks apart the sap and it's very easy to wash out. In addition to being great for cleaning up sap, hand sanitizer has a few other uses as well. First off, since it has alcohol in it, it is flammable, so you can actually apply it to tinders. If you are having trouble getting a fire started, you can apply some of this to your tinder and it will help with ignition. And you can use it for sanitizing, obviously, your hands, keeping them clean, which is important. but also for cleaning up your body. If you're starting to smell a bit, you can apply a little bit to your underarms or any areas that are starting to smell, and the alcohol will kill the bacteria that causes the bad odors. So this concludes this short episode of tips and tricks for the outdoors. Let me know if you guys like this kind of content. These are just the first few little tips and tricks that popped into my head. I have tons more I could share if you guys are interested, and I could go into some more detailed and more advanced tips and tricks as well. So let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you've learned something, and hopefully these tips and tricks will make your life in the outdoors a little bit easier. I want to thank you all for watching. If this is your first time here, I hope that this video has earned your subscription. I will be back right away with the next one. Going to be doing lots of camping trips right away, so stay tuned for that. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you'll join me in the next one. Until then, God bless and happy trails.